course, when considering fiscal measures or financial changes, the figures that matter are those provided by the Office of Budget Responsibility, and the Office of Budget Responsibility has certified that the non-dom reforms the government have implemented will raise £33.8 billion in total revenue, and that figure accounts for some non-doms who are ineligible for the new regime choosing to leave the UK.
Mr. Speaker, look, public investment makes us all more prosperous, but clearly that public investment needs to be paid for. Investment in our roads, in our rail, and indeed our energy infrastructure as well. Could the Minister set out how we are funding that public investment by taxing the very richest people in this country?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely correct that the changes we've made to the non-dom reform regime are essential to raise billions of pounds to support the public finances and get our public services back on their feet. And I contrast it, Mr. Speaker, with some of the proposals put out by parties opposite. Indeed, Reform UK's plans are a tax cut for foreign billionaires.
Mark Garnier, Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. So in a budget last year, as we've been talking about, the Chancellor tucked away around £10 billion over the next couple of years from reforms to the non-dom tax regime. The OBR, I think it's important to remember, said in its fiscal outlook that this figure was highly uncertain. And a high-level survey by Oxford Economics found that fully two-thirds of non-doms are considering leaving the country in the next couple of years as a direct result of these policies. That implies not an increase of £10 billion, but a decrease of £8 billion. The Chancellor has created a fiscal black hole of £18 billion with just one policy alone. So, Mr. Speaker, in this week of heroic U-turns from the front bench opposite, can the Chancellor of the Exchequer confirm if she will be axing this tax and when she'll finally condemn it to the history books?
Mr. Speaker, I wasn't really sure if there was a policy suggestion in that comment or not, but as he'll know, the fiscal black hole that we had to address when we won the general election was the £22 billion black hole that they left after their mismanagement of the economy. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, the Office of Budget Responsibility have confirmed that our reforms to the non-dom regime, our removal of non-dom tax status, will raise £33.8 billion over the 5-year forecast. And it is the OBR's figures which we will trust in that regard.
Rachel Musk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Number 3, please.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government is committed to ensuring that there are fewer sick and disabled people in poverty by helping them into work and getting them off NHS waiting lists. That is why, at the Spring Statement, we announced the largest investment in employment support in at least a generation. The Government has already taken action to tackle poverty, including with the fair repayment rate, which lowers the cap on deductions in universal credit. And we've increased the national living wage by 6.7%. Beyond this, we're investing to reduce poverty by expanding free school meals, investing in £1 billion settlement for crisis support, and we'll be setting out our child poverty strategy in the autumn. We've invested £29 billion in reducing NHS waiting lists, and since taking office, there are 385,000 more people in work.
Rachel Muskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many disabled people are really struggling right now. We know that 3 in 10 are living in poverty, as I can see in my constituency of York. But I was particularly taken aback by the Women Budget Group report, which highlighted that 3/4 of people that are going to lose their PIP and carers allowance are women. So how will she ensure that when fiscal decisions are made, that we look particularly at the intersectionality between women, disabled people and other protected characteristics to ensure that they're not pushed further into poverty?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and she will know that nobody who's currently receiving personal independence payments will see any reduction in the support that they get. And in terms of supporting women into work and recognising some of those intersectionalities that my honourable friend mentions, this government have increased the national living wage by 6.7%, and sadly it is still too often women who are paid the lowest wages. Our employment rights bill will offer more security and dignity in work. We're rolling out more childcare, including new nurseries at primary schools. And today, my right honourable friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, will be making a statement announcing the launch into a review on parental leave, something that could be beneficial to all parents, all working parents, but particularly for mums.
Tim Farage.
Mr Speaker, does the Chancellor accept that cancer is a major driver of poverty? Not only, of course, people who are ill not being able to work during their treatment, but sometimes people who are happily cured find that they have collateral damage, which means they're not able to work at a full level throughout the rest of their life. Does she recognise that radiotherapy plays a huge part in making sure people are cured and then able to be productive in society, given that the international average for people with cancer having radiotherapy is 53%, the UK is only 36%? Will she look at the economic advantages of investing in radiotherapy?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. We invested at in the spending review £29 billion additional every year in day-to-day spending in the National Health Service, as well as a big record uplift in capital spending in the NHS, so that there is more money for the equipment to do that vital work, including in cancer treatments, as the honourable gentleman mentioned. We have delivered in our first year in office 4 million additional appointments in the NHS and reduced NHS waiting lists by 250,000. That's only possible because of the decisions we took in the budget last year, like increasing taxes on non-DOMs, but also the increase in national insurance contributions, which has gone into funding our National Health Service.
Dave Bent.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. St Helens is ranked as the 26th most deprived area nationally, and this poverty has an impact on health and sickness from pre-birth to old age. As a country, we're spending more on crisis intervention and less on early intervention after 14 years of the Tories. Can the Chancellor please assure me and people in St Helens North that this government will do all it can to properly fund councils and health services to help more people live longer, healthier lives?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. It's a really important point and something that our Prime Minister is absolutely committed to, early intervention to stop the costs of crisis emerging later on. And later this week, my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, will be publishing on the anniversary of the Labour creation of the Health Service, the 10-year health plan, which will focus on things to ensure that young people particularly those in poverty and some of the most deprived communities in our country are not let down and have a healthy start in life, and that's something that across the whole of government we're determined to achieve.
Peter Wishaw.
Today's disastrous welfare debacle is all down to her and her obsessive pursuit to stick to these grotesque Tory fiscal rules. But 150,000 people could still be saved from poverty if all the Scottish Labour MPs joined those prepared to vote down this particular bill. Does she agree with me that if Scottish Labour MPs go through this lobby to support this bill, they'd be as well not bothering standing again?
This government changed the fiscal rules at the budget last year. A stability rule, so for the first time we pay for day-to-day spending through tax receipts, and then an investment rule which enables us to invest in those things that will help grow the economy, like energy infrastructure, defence spending, and also transport and digital infrastructure. As a result, in the budget and then in the spring statement this year, we unlocked £300 billion more to be able to spend during the course of this Parliament, including the record settlement for the Scottish Government. It's now up to the Scottish Government to spend that money wisely and to try and reduce waiting lists in Scotland, as we have in England and indeed in Wales.
Minister James Wyle.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. First, it was a humiliating reversal of the Chancellor's winter fuel cuts. Now welfare cuts that she rushed to meet her fiscal rules have been shredded, leaving unfunded spending to pay for. In October, the Chancellor said extending the freeze in income tax thresholds would hurt working people and take more money out of their pay slips. So does she stand by the commitment to end that freeze from 2028, yes or no?
Well, of course, it was his government, when they're on this side of the House, that froze those allowances, taking more money out of the pockets of working people. And despite that, they left a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. I'm not taking any lessons from the party opposite, who have opposed everything that is needed to invest in our public services, which is how we are in the mess we are in because of the damage that they caused.
Jones.
Question 4, please, Mr Speaker.
Front bench.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With permission, I would like to answer this question together with question 22. The Government recognises the critical contribution that transport makes to our growth mission. The Government increased the capital envelope by over £100 billion at autumn budget last year and a further £13 billion at the spring statement. Taken together, this represents a big increase in capital investment. As a result, the transport capital budget, excluding HS2, will increase by 1.9% per year in real terms over the spending review period. This investment will improve connectivity in our towns, cities and villages, reduce journey times and increase transport reliability. For areas of transport that are devolved, it is up to the Scottish and the Welsh governments to allocate their funding and be accountable for their respective parliaments for those decisions.
Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I welcome the announcement in the spending review that railway projects in Wales, including 5 new stations east of Cardiff, will receive an extra £445 million in funding over the next decade. So could the Chancellor provide more detail as to how the money will be specifically allocated and when work will begin?
Thank my honourable friend for that question, and it was a pleasure to be in Cardiff just after the spending review and to look at the difference that investment this Labour government is putting into transport in Wales. The spending review and the infrastructure strategy recognised Wales's long-term infrastructure needs and how they'd been neglected for too long by the Tory party, and we delivered at least £445 million for rail enhancements. This provides funding to continue to develop and deliver the stations identified in the Burns Review, including Newport West and Somerton. Plans for future rail investment in Wales will be made in close consultation with the Welsh Government and engagement through the Wales Rail Board.
Steinbeck.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I declare an interest as co-chair of the British Buses APPG. Our £15.6 billion commitment to regional transport through the spending review should be good news for bus manufacturing. However, Alexander Dennis's ongoing consultation threatens 400 jobs in Falkirk, another major employer at risk just after the closure of the Grangemouth oil refinery. The SNP's Scot Z2 scheme famously failed to invest in Scotland, where things are built and by who matters. Will the Chancellor act to guarantee our investment in transport is of maximum benefit to Scottish vehicle manufacturers?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and it is important that as this government puts more money into infrastructure, including transport, that benefits companies and jobs here in Britain. And it really is not right that the Scottish Government spend more on buses made in China than they do on buses made in Scotland. There is nothing stopping the Scottish nationals in Scotland actually investing in jobs and growth in Scotland.
Graham Stewart.
MPs and councils of all parties across East and North Yorkshire are united in wanting to enhance connectivity in the area, have greener options and optimise the economic output of the area. So will the Chancellor work with us on a cross-party basis to look at the reopening of a direct rail line from Hull to York, so those two great university cities are united by effective transport infrastructure once again?
I really welcome the fact that the honourable gentleman supports the investment that this Labour government are making in transport and infrastructure after the neglect for 14 years by his own party. We have increased transport spending by 1.9% a year in real terms in every year of this spending review period, benefiting all parts of the country, including Yorkshire, where both he and I have the honour and privilege of being members of Parliament.
Dr. Lucan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And the Prime Minister, the Business Secretary and indeed the Chancellor had the joy of coming to my constituency and seeing Myra last week. Now, they would have come via the A5. The last Prime Minister in his speech talked about the funding they'd submit for the A5. However, in the spending review, that seems to have dropped. Will she commit to the same funding that we had from the last government to the A5, because it's really important for my area?
I mean, the irony is that the last government made a lot of commitments. The difference is they didn't put any money into delivering them. And that is the difference that this government is making with fully funded plans to upgrade transport. Now, the DfT now have their settlement and they will look at a number of projects. But the mess left by the party opposite is something that we have had to sort out. And they have not backed, the Conservatives have not backed any of the measures that we have taken to bring in more revenue. And yet, as we've seen they're very keen on spending the money. Well, I'm afraid that is why we were left with a £22 billion black hole when we came into office a year ago.
Liz Jarvis.
Number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I would like to group this with questions 11, 23 and 24. Kickstarting economic growth in every region and nation is the #1 mission of our government. As part of our new infrastructure strategy, we have allocated £725 billion to building and rebuilding bridges, roads, schools and hospitals across the country, and also £2.3 billion in local government transport will benefit places such as Eastleigh and Gloucestershire, and in Wales, key rail routes will benefit from £445 million of investments.
Liz Jarvis.
Mr. Speaker, small to medium-sized businesses are the backbone of the local economy in Eastleigh, creating jobs and driving innovation. However, local businesses, including the precision manufacturing firm GW Martin, have told me that due to the increased costs as a result of the changes to employer national insurance contributions, they have had no choice but to pass these costs on to customers, which makes UK manufacturing less competitive globally. What concrete steps will the government take to help businesses in Eastleigh?
I thank her for that question. Half of small businesses won't be affected by the employer national insurance increase, as she will know. And we will also be setting out a small business strategy, talked about small businesses, in the government's plan to support those businesses across the UK later this year.
Gavin Fuchs.
As my honourable friend knows, I am delighted with the spending review's investment in Welsh Rail of £445 million. It shows the power of 2 Labour governments working together and corrects years of underfunding from the Tories opposite. This investment in Welsh communities and Welsh business is extremely welcome and going to be a brilliant driver for our government's mission of creating economic growth. Would she outline what steps she is taking with other departments to ensure that rural economies and market towns like Monmouth, Abergavenny, Caldicott and Chepstow and small businesses across Monmouthshire can be helped to thrive and contribute to that growth mission?
Thank you. I welcome what you said. The government is also supporting the rural economy with over £2.7 billion a year for sustainable farming and nature recovery, and we're investing £1.9 billion to improve digital connectivity, which will be important to the small businesses and others that she mentioned. And as I said to the previous question, we will be setting out a small business strategy later this year.
Cameron Thomas.
Question 20, please, Mr. Speaker. North Gloucestershire is ready to jumpstart economic growth, but its existing advanced engineering and defence industry is ready to drive the UK toward economic and defence objectives. Babcock, GE Aerospace, Moog and Safran already develop world-leading technologies, and the Garden Town project includes a further 100 hectares of employment area. Will the Minister join me in Gloucestershire so we can demonstrate this expertise and the potential for growth on the ground?
I thank him for his question. Defence companies are an incredibly important part of the economy, and he will know that we're increasing defence spending up to 2.6% by the end of this Parliament, and also it's only reached these levels ever before under a Labour government.
Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The industrial strategy was right to highlight the potential for the National Cyber Innovation Centre in my constituency. If we're going to deliver that, we'll need to make sure that Junction 10 of the M5 is also done to enable the traffic to get around that development. This is a development of national importance. The Strategic Sites Accelerator has also been cited by the government. I'm wondering if ministers can advise me on how areas like Liberal Democrat-run Cheltenham and Gloucestershire can access that fund.
I will make sure he gets a meeting with the relevant Transport Minister, but I hope that he is as excited as I am about the £1 billion we're investing in the state-of-the-art Golden Valley development, which will create 12,000 high-skilled jobs and 3,700 new homes, which is obviously close to the GCHQ headquarters in Cheltenham, and I'm sure that's something he will welcome.
Right, let's come to Joe White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Minister agree with me that the new Green Book, with its proposals on place-based analysis, will actually mean that left behind places like mine will start to get the infrastructure investment that we so desperately need? Would the Minister care to comment on that?
Absolutely. We pledged to reform the Green Book, and we're doing precisely that. We alongside the spending review, we recognise the strategic importance of investment in every part of the country. We want to realise the growth potential of places like she represents. She's a doughty champion for her constituency.
Paul Waugh.
Mr Speaker, after years of unfunded and undelivered promises from the party opposite of levelling up, places like Rochdale are finally getting the fairest share of money that they really deserve. So can the Minister outline, just as she expanded a little bit on the Green Book, just how the place-based approach of the Green Book will actually help places like mine and advanced manufacturing in the Afton Valley?
Absolutely. Sorry, excuse me. That was nearly very significant. Thank my honourable friend for that question. As you know, we launched the transport funding of £15.6 billion for transport for city regions in his own constituency. And I'm really pleased that as a government, we recognise the potential of places that, like he represents, and we're going to unlock that regional growth across the north and other parts of the country.
I'll just make the point again, we're a long way from Eastleigh. I don't understand how they're grouped in this way, because other people who should come on the order paper are being left behind and missing out. Deirdre Costigan.
Question number 6, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, the spending review announced significant investment into clean energy to strengthen our energy security and our economy. This includes over £8.3 billion for Great British Energy and Great British Energy Nuclear and £14.2 billion for Sizewell C.
Deirdre Costigan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Although my constituents in Ealing Southall are no doubt sweltering in today's heat, they are worried that come winter they will again face eye-watering energy bills to heat their homes. The previous government left us with the leakiest homes in Europe, slashing grants for loft and cavity insulation. So can the Minister set out the work this Labour government is doing, not just to support the clean energy sector, but to upgrade my constituents' homes to take that clean, cheap energy and to bring down bills in Ealing Southall?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question, and she's an excellent advocate for her constituents in Ealing Southall, and I'm sure that many of them will benefit from our Warm Homes Plan, which will see £13.2 billion invested across this Parliament. That investment will be allocated to schemes to support the rollout of heat pumps, alongside energy efficiency measures and other low-carbon technologies. This will help, of course, with environmental goals, but crucially, it will cut bills and tackle fuel poverty.
Robbie Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This week, the previous 19% tariff on US ethanol falls to zero through a 1.4 billion litre quota negotiated by this Labour government, which represents the entire size of the UK's entire ethanol market, which will have hugely damaging impact for our rural economy, UK jobs and indeed the NHS, with government effectively offshoring the benefits of ethanol production and its byproducts to the US. So what conversations is the Chancellor and her team having with this green energy sector, where there is a huge number of job losses now at stake in Teesside and in Hull?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and of course our colleagues in the Department for Business and Trade are having conversations with those businesses and industries that may be affected, but I hope from what he said he would welcome the trade deal that we got with the US, the economic deal which is so important for our prosperity and which will see us being the only country to avoid some of the tariffs which are affecting all other countries around the world.
Shadow Minister Gareth Davis.
Mr Speaker, it's becoming clear that 1 year in, the public still don't know what Labour is all about. And the same could be said for their so-called National Wealth Fund. Not only has it invested less equity in clean energy than before the costly £7 billion rebrand, but it is also now rightly subject to a Treasury Select Committee inquiry, at which expert witnesses could not name a single thing it is doing differently. And the CEO of the British Business Bank now says the government did not understand what it was setting up. So can the Minister tell us, why has the National Wealth Fund invested less in clean energy than before the costly rebrand, and why did they U-turn on incorporating the British Business Bank?
Mr Speaker, the Shadow Minister forgets to mention the fact that we've had £30 billion of investment in green energy since the general election, and I'm sure he will have consulted the spending review documents very closely. I know he's a diligent Shadow Minister in that regard, and he will have seen the investment that we're putting into Great British Energy, Sizewell C, small modular reactors, fusion, nuclear R&D, the Warm Homes Plan, carbon capture and storage. All of this is to make sure that we improve our energy security and bring down bills for good.
Jim Shaw.
Question 7, lucky 7, Mr Speaker. Thank you.
The honourable member is always lucky, and I can reassure him that there will be an increase in the Northern Ireland Executive's funding through the AME forecasting process. This will be confirmed at the autumn budget in the usual way. But more importantly to pensioners in Northern Ireland, he will be aware that in June the Communities Minister confirmed that winter fuel payments will be available in Northern Ireland on the same basis as in England and Wales.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for that very positive answer? What assessment has been made on the impacts of the winter fuel payment in line with inflation? And given the increase in the cost of living, does the Minister agree that the current winter fuel payments are up to the standard in terms of how far they will go to support those who are eligible? Thanks so much. Thank you.
I thank the honourable member for his question. Our priority at the moment is to extend eligibility for the winter fuel payments, as he and I have discussed on a number of occasions. But obviously that sits within a wider set of support. He'll have seen the extension to the Warm Homes discount announced in recent days, and he'll have seen the extension of the Household Support Fund. And of course, as he's well aware, social security is a transferred policy in Northern Ireland.
Risky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree that it's only because of the Barnett formula and a Labour government that Scotland, including communities in Stirling and Strathallan, now has record funding of £50 billion this year, and that it is deeply concerning that the SNP government in Scotland have no clear plan to invest this funding properly in Scotland's NHS, Scotland's schools and Scotland's local services?
Well, as so often, my honourable friend said it all, because we have seen record investment in the Scottish Government's budget, but what we also see is waiting lists that are not falling in Scotland, just as they are in England and in Wales.
Sir James.
Question number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, we very much recognise the social and cultural value of horse racing, which is why on-course betting is exempt from duty and horse racing is the only sport to receive a government-mandated levy. We are consulting on measures to simplify gambling duty and improve compliance. No decision will be made on rates before the budget, and we are working with the horse racing sector to identify unintended consequences and mitigations.
Sir James.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I refer members to my register of interest. In Doncaster, we are incredibly proud of our historic racecourse, which is home to the iconic St Leger Festival. And as someone that has attended the racecourse for a number of events throughout my life, I can say that it's part of our local community and brings thousands of jobs. So can the Minister confirm that he will continue dialogue with the horse racing industry, noting that it brings 85,000 jobs to the country nationally and is the second largest spectator sport in the country, identifying that actually this is very, very different from online casinos and games of chance?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's excellent to hear my honourable friend speaking so passionately about Doncaster Racecourse and the wider sector, and I can reassure her we will absolutely continue close dialogue with the horse racing industry on these proposals. I and my officials are working closely with the horse racing sector to identify any unintended consequences and possible mitigations, and we intend to continue those conversations with the industry, and of course we welcome further engagement.
Mr.
Speaker. How does the Government assess the implementation of a flat rate in terms of improving fairness and simplification for all involved, reducing administrative costs and encouraging compliance?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. And one of the principles behind the reforms that we're looking to the gambling duty is to tackle, obviously, issues of compliance by simplifying the system. The consultation is open at the moment, and I would encourage him and anyone else who's interested in contributing towards that to make their views known.
Nick Smith.
Number 10, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My ministerial colleague Sarah Jones has recently met with the trustees of the British Coal Staff Superannuation Scheme to consider their proposals, and I have been monitoring the developments closely.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Chief Secretary for his answer? Last weekend I attended the anniversary of the Six Bells mining disaster. 45 men and boys died in 1960. I met Mervyn Frampton. His brother Keith was killed in that tragedy. Mervyn is 19 now, and we talked about when he and his buddies powered our country and were members of the Coal Staff Pension Scheme. Will the Chief Secretary please be mindful of those who risked their lives for us, but who are still owed pension fair play?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question and extend the thoughts of the House to his constituents and the communities that he represents. My honourable friend will know that I've always kept the service and sacrifices of the mining communities in my mind, both in opposition in campaigning for changes to the mine workers' pension scheme, which this government implemented at the last budget, and now in considering the proposals from the BCSSS scheme. And I'll be looking in more detail at these issues over the summer and hope to say more in the autumn.
Number 11, Mr. Speaker.
Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government protected the smallest businesses from changes to national insurance by increasing the employment allowance from £5,000 to £10,500. That means that this year 865,000 employers would pay no national insurance contributions at all, and more than half of employers will either gain or see no change to their national insurance contributions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the recent trio of U-turns that this government has demonstrated, they're keen to change their minds as well as create new multi-billion-pound black holes. Can the Chancellor do the right thing and U-turn on the increase in national insurance contributions to provide businesses with a much-needed boost in this sluggish economy that she has created?
I think it's a bit rich for anyone in the party opposite to mention black holes, Mr. Speaker, after the one they left for us to clear up. The honourable gentleman would have seen the Lloyd's Business Barometer, which has recently been published, that shows business confidence is now at a 9-year high, led by increases in confidence in retail and in manufacturing. And they referenced in that report the impact that the spending review had on boosting business confidence, a recognition that this government is backing Britain and backing Britain's businesses.
Bill Esterson.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. And the Chancellor is quite right to mention that business confidence is at a 9-year high. Doesn't it go to show that not only were the announcements in the spending review right for business, but her emphasis on stability and certainty in the economy is exactly what is needed. And moreover, it's in sharp contrast to the chaos, the constant changes of policy and the complete disaster in economic policy we saw from the government opposite.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. The stability that this government has returned to the economy has meant that the Bank of England has been able to cut interest rates by 4 times in the last year, taking hundreds of pounds off people's mortgages, which was had a big impact under the last government. But the reasons for the increase in business confidence also include the industrial strategy publication, the spending review, the 3 trade deals, all of which are boosting business confidence and have helped create 385,000 new jobs in Britain since the last general election.
Richard Fuller, Shadow Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Labour's jobs tax has really clobbered British businesses. The Office for National Statistics says the number of available jobs is collapsing. The Institute of Directors, perhaps the Chancellor hasn't updated herself on how British business thinks about confidence. The Institute of Directors says today that business confidence has plummeted. The Bank of England is warning of significant declines in wage growth. And the British Chamber of Commerce says taxes on businesses cannot be increased. But now, the Chancellor has bungled welfare changes, eviscerating confidence in the Prime Minister, and blowing an even bigger hole in the public financing, meaning she will raise taxes yet again this autumn. So will the Chancellor avoid creating the same damaging uncertainty she did last summer by ruling out from the dispatch box today any further tax increases on British businesses?
I'm not going to take lessons from the party opposite that increased taxes 25 times. And when they increased taxes, it was always ordinary working people who paid the price. In our budget last year, we protected the pay slips of ordinary working people by not increasing their income tax, their national insurance or their VAT. And we didn't go ahead with the planned increase in fuel duty that the party opposite had planned. So instead of talking down the British economy, why doesn't the party opposite back the plans that are backed by British businesses to grow our economy and make working people in our country better off?
Daisy Cooper, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Non-profit businesses and charities have been hit really hard by the jobs tax. Last week, my local Meals on Wheels service told me that businesses like theirs around the country are having to make redundancies and put up prices for vulnerable people. So in the context of today's welfare reforms that the government is pursuing, can the Chancellor confirm whether the Treasury will conduct any assessment of the increased cost of essential and charitable services that are relied upon by disabled people and their carers at a time when their welfare support could be cut?
Very good question.
Well, as the Honourable Lady knows, the changes we've made to the welfare bill will mean that nobody who is currently receiving personal independence payments will have a cut. And so the premise of her question I just don't think is correct. But in the welfare bill today, we'll also be voting for the biggest increase in the Universal Credit Standard Allowance for a generation. We will be voting today on protecting those people with the most severe conditions from having to be reassessed for their conditions, something which is degrading. We've got rid of the Tories work capability assessment changes, which the courts said were illegal, and we're putting £1 billion into back to work support. At the same time, we're investing £29 billion in the NHS, only possible because of the national insurance increase rise on business, which the Liberal Democrats oppose, and yet that's how we're funding our NHS.
Rachel Gilmore.
Question number 12, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government has committed £2.7 billion per year to support sustainable farming and nature recovery, supporting the rural economy, and we've also confirmed investment of £1.9 billion over 4 years into digital connectivity, as well as the £2.3 billion of local government transport funding for smaller cities, towns and rural areas.
Rachel Gilmore.
Mr. Speaker, whilst I welcome the Government's rural growth plans, I am concerned about the persistent poverty faced in many rural areas. The additional cost of living in these communities, known as the rural premium, exacerbates hardship. What specific steps will the Chancellor take to support those in or near poverty in rural areas, and will the Treasury commit to revising the indices of multiple deprivation to more accurately reflect deprivation in rural and coastal communities, such as West Somerset and Mid Devon?
The MHCLGE will be coming forward with further details of funding for the 350 most deprived communities across the country, including rural areas.
Jane Kirkham.
Mr. Speaker, as one of the most deprived regions of Northern Europe, Cornwall benefited from Objective 1 structural and SPF funding. Can the Minister confirm that under this government, Cornwall will not lose out on funds for economic growth and the investment that our communities deserve?
We're supporting growth across the country, and we'll be publishing further details of how we will do that in the coming weeks.
Jessica Turner.
Question number 13, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 10-year infrastructure strategy is a key part of this government's growth mission, committing to a minimum of £725 billion of investment over the next 10 years to invest in local transport, affordable homes and modernising schools and hospitals in every part of the country.
Jessica Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was pleased to see that the creative and digital industries, the financial services and clean energy were all included as priority sectors in the government's industrial strategy. These have huge potential in my Bournemouth West constituency. I want to focus on the latter and ask the Minister, as a fellow South West MP, what assessment he's made of the Dorset Clean Energy Supercluster on growth, jobs and in bringing people's bills down, not just in Bournemouth West but across the region.
And I thank my honourable friend for championing the Dorset Clean Energy Supercluster opportunity, which I know was announced by her council at UK Reef only recently. Offshore wind, hydrogen, nuclear and carbon capture and storage are frontier technologies and industries at the heart of our clean energy sector plan and will create opportunities in every part of the country, including in the South West.
Neera Wilson.
Mr. Speaker, the infrastructure plan reiterated the government's support for a third runway at Heathrow, a project that the Chancellor has repeatedly stated will be privately funded. However, given the vast amount of rail and road infrastructure that will be needed to support a bigger Heathrow, as well as the huge risk a private company would undertake that they would want underwritten by government, could the Chief Secretary outline to the House how much taxpayer cash has been earmarked as needing to enable a bigger Heathrow?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. She will know that we are waiting to receive detailed proposals from Heathrow for the development of the third runway. The Government will consider those in due course and make further announcements when decisions have been taken.
Joe Powell.
14, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to answer this question with question 16. Mr. Speaker, the year before we came to power, the tax gap stood at £47 billion. That is unacceptable, and that is why we announced the most ambitious ever package of tax gap measures at budget and went even further at spring statement. We are now forecast to raise £7.5 billion from the tax gap in 29-30, including by recruiting 5,500 more compliance officers, investing in better technology and closing loopholes. We will bring forward further measures to close the tax gap at budget in the autumn.
Joe Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Minister is no doubt aware, an increasingly common issue on our high streets is phoenixing, where a shop unit continues to trade while cycling through multiple limited companies every few months, none of which pay corporation tax, VAT or business rates. So can the Minister encourage HMRC officials to walk along Whitehall, just a few hundred metres from this chamber, and take a look at whether the series of Harry Potter themed gift shops across London, accused by London Centric of doing exactly that, are playing by the rules and ensure that tax enforcement supports legitimate small businesses on our high street?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is a powerful campaigner and an advocate for tackling those who do not play by the rules. And whilst I'm unable to comment on individual taxpayer affairs because of my position, I very much recognise the issue that he refers to. We're determined to tackle this problem. And, Mr. Speaker, HMRC is working cross-government on enforcement action, including working with Companies House and the Insolvency Service to tackle phoenicism.
Andrew George.
Speaker, but does the Minister not agree that handing away £500 million of taxpayers' money to those who are entitled to small business rate relief, which is what has happened in Cornwall over the last 10 years, it would be far better to invest that money in desperately needed first homes for local families in desperate housing need than to give it to second home owners? And would the Minister be prepared to meet with me so that we can drive a better method of achieving housing justice through tax policy?
Mr. Speaker, I would happily hear from the honourable gentleman about how he will support our home building plans in his constituency and across the country, because we know that the most important thing to tackle the housing crisis is to support the reforms that this government is making to the planning system to make sure we can build 1.5 million new homes and we can invest the £39 billion over a 10-year affordable homes programme, the biggest in a generation.
We now come to topicals. Dunlop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Topical number 1.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government is delivering on the priorities of the British people. Yesterday, the Office for National Statistics confirmed that the UK was the fastest growing G7 nation in the first quarter of this year. Since the election, the Labour Party, this Labour government, has brought in £120 billion of private investment into our economy. There have been 4 interest rate cuts lowering the cost of mortgages, 384,000 new jobs, over 1,000 jobs per day since this government was elected. Real wages increasing more in the first 10 months of this Labour government than they did in the first 10 years of the last Conservative government, and a £1,400 pay rise for a full-time worker on the national living wage. That is the difference that this government is making after 14 years of mismanagement by the party opposite.
Award-winning bookshop and deli Main Street Trading Company in St Boswells has been forced to reduce their operating hours because, and I quote, increases in employer national insurance mean that our operating cost base has increased significantly. So what advice does the Chancellor have for small businesses who are suffering because of this Labour government's reckless decisions?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. This government actually increased the employment allowance from £5,000 to £10,500, and that means 865,000 employers will pay no national insurance at all. Indeed, half of employers will either gain or see no change. But it was also welcome that the Lloyd's Business Barometer showed that business confidence was at a 9-year high, with a particular uptick in retail. I can't comment on an individual business, but that is the system nationwide.
We've got to get going. Brian Leishman's a good example again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask you the £200 million National Wealth Fund commitment for Project Willow, namely how it gets accessed, what minimum and maximum amount can be accessed by an applicant, and if it is exclusively for businesses that would be based on being positioned in the existing footprint of the Grangemouth site that's owned or operated by Petro Ineos or Ineos.
Mr. Speaker, £200 million is available, and the government will, of course, look at all proposals for investing that.
Mill Stride, Shadow Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the winter fuel payment U-turn will cost £1.25 billion. The welfare reform U-turn will cost £2.5 billion, all adding to Labour's unfunded black hole. And this from the Chancellor, who said that she would never make a spending commitment without explaining where the money was coming from. Yet another U-turn. But, Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor has also said that her fiscal rules are ironclad and non-negotiable. So could she reconfirm that commitment now, or are we heading for yet another U-turn?
Well, it would be a bit more, take it a bit more seriously if the party opposite weren't actually voting against the welfare reforms this evening, and if they hadn't committed to fully reverse the winter fuel changes, which is going to cost a further £400 million that they can't explain. Now, look, I am always grateful to the right honourable gentleman for his questions, because he always offers a useful lesson in what not to do. Even George Osborne now says that the Shadow Chancellor has no credible economic plan. Now, I'll give him this. He knows a thing or two about welfare spending, because under his watch, the UK became the only country in the G7 with an employment rate stuck below pre-pandemic levels. And under his watch, the cost of working age inactivity rose by £15.7 billion a year.
Right. The Right Honourable Lady, the House will note, did not categorically rule out the possibility of changing the fiscal rules in the autumn. Given that, could I ask her, will she at least confirm that she stands by her commitment not to raise the rates of income tax, national insurance or VAT in the autumn? Is it a yes, or is it another potential U-turn?
We made a commitment in our manifesto not to increase the key taxes that working people pay. We stick by those commitments because, unlike the party opposite, we stick by our manifesto.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Towns in my constituency, like Prado and Haltwhistle, have lost access to bank branches, with Prado losing their Lloyds branch in May and the town of Hexham due to lose 2 branches in November. These closures have a huge impact on customers and communities, yet the guidance on banking hubs is often too restrictive. So will the Right Honourable Friend meet with me to discuss how we can support financial inclusion in the Tyne Valley, in the Hexham constituency and beyond?
We understand the importance of in-person banking in his constituency and elsewhere, which is why we secured the commitment of the industry to roll out 350 banking hubs across the UK. I'm always happy to meet with my honourable friend, and I just wanted to note that I'm also leading a financial inclusion strategy, which we will be publishing later this year, which has an emphasis on access to banking.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. More than half of all local authorities are having to overspend on the dedicated school grant to cover the increasing costs of SEND services, and this increasing demand for inter-authority borrowing has pushed up interest rates. Even before the government publishes its SEND white paper, could I urge the Chancellor to urgently look to introduce a concessionary interest rate, perhaps at the same level of the Public Works Loan Board, so councils don't have to put up council tax just to service their interest payments. They can spend it on frontline services instead.
I thank the Honourable Lady for that question. And the Honourable Lady and members of this House will have seen in the spending review a real terms uplift in school spending every single year in this Parliament, as well as additional capital investment to help rebuild our schools after the roofs were literally crumbling under the previous Conservative government. My right honourable friend, the Education Secretary, will be publishing a green paper on SEND reform in the autumn, and we have allowed the statutory override for local authorities for SEND education for a further 2 years whilst we bring in those reforms. This government wants to make sure that mainstream schools are more inclusive for all children.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recent weeks, ministers have been arguing that vital support for the disabled is fiscally unsustainable because it is forecast to rise to £60.7 billion per year by 2029-30. What assessment has the Chancellor made of the fiscal sustainability of the 107 non-structural tax breaks currently costing HMRC £207 billion per year?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and he will know at the budget last year we got rid of the non-dom tax status, we increased capital gains, we put VAT on private school fees, we ended the loophole for private equity, and more measures to in total raise £40 billion. And as a result of that, we are investing £300 billion more than the plans we inherited from the party opposite. But we're the only country where... Oh, all right, OK.
You've got to get through. Helen Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Businesses and individuals in North Shropshire tell me that the single biggest factor holding back growth in our rural area is poor public transport. But Shropshire was poorly served by the bus service improvement plan and the spending review focused investment on city areas. Can the Chancellor tell us how she's going to improve public transport in rural areas to drive the growth that we so desperately need there?
I thank the honourable lady for that question. We are increasing transport investment by 1.9% in real terms after HS2 in every year of the spending review period, and we are extending the bus fare cap as well, which is particularly beneficial to rural areas.
Law.
I believe that redistribution should be core to everything that we do. It's core to the toughest decisions we've had to make. It's core to our efforts towards growth. So does the Chancellor agree with me that putting more pounds in the pockets of those on low incomes is the best thing we can do to grow our economy?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government wholeheartedly agrees with my honourable friend. At the end of this Parliament, people will be better off as a consequence of the decisions this Labour government is taking. That's why we've already increased the national living wage by 6.7% to benefit 3 million people, with full-time workers seeing around a £1,400 a year increase in their wages.
Bedford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, I had the privilege of visiting Loros, Leicestershire's much-respected palliative care charity. At full capacity, they can offer 31 beds to local residents. But sadly, because of the measures the Chancellor introduced, such as the hike in national insurance, they're now only operating 18 of those beds. Could I ask the Chancellor to look again at softening the impact of her measures, particularly on charities like Loros?
I'm sure that the relevant health minister would be happy to meet representatives of the hospice. The health secretary did set out the settlement for hospices at the end of last year to compensate financially for the increase in national insurance. But those increases in national insurance are funding the NHS, which of course helps fund our hospices.
Mike McNulty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This government has delivered record real terms settlement for Scotland at the spending review, so it was deeply concerning to hear the news from the Scottish Government last week of a £2.6 billion black hole in the public finances, which could see NHS spend reduced by 12%. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that the SNP's long-standing record of fiscal mismanagement must end, and Scottish ministers must ensure that that funding gets to struggling Scottish public services?
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Labour government in Westminster is delivering for the people of Scotland. As a consequence of our spending review, Scotland will receive an average of £50.9 billion per year over this Parliament, the largest real terms increase in funding since devolution began. The only reason there's a black hole in the budget in Scotland is because of the SNP government, and the people of Scotland need a new direction with a Labour government in Scotland.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A not-for-profit care company in my constituency told me they feel the government's waging war on the care sector. And I met residents and staff at a Sunday lunch at Magna Care Home. The managers told me they can't recruit locally at all, and because of the changes in social care visas, they're struggling to recruit internationally. I know the government want to build our own workforce, but what are they planning to do to support organisations while we get that training in place so we don't see care homes going bust?
Can I thank the honourable member for her question, and on behalf of the House thank social care workers for the service they provide in all of our constituencies. Because of the commitment of this Labour government to social workers and the social care system, we've increased funding through local government settlements by £4 billion for social care by 28-29, and we'll be bringing forward a fair pay agreement to make sure there's a fair deal for those people serving our constituents on the front line.
Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the main benefit of Brexit has been to printers because of all the extra paperwork the previous government has created. The National Audit Office has estimated their border arrangements have cost us £4.7 billion and rising, and the single trade window will add to that red tape. Does the Chancellor agree with me that the best way to reduce these paperwork requirements in the first place is to do a good deal with Europe, and can she update us on her progress on that?
Well, I thank the honourable member for her question, and of course she will have seen the Prime Minister's work to reset relations with the EU. She also mentioned the single trade window, and it is the government's intention to deliver that single trade window, and of course more widely the government is committed to minimising administrative burdens and frictions experienced by businesses trading internationally.
Jack Rankin.
We all know that there is a difference between welfare cuts and welfare reforms. These cuts were the maths of Treasury mandarins. It's the same thinking that saw winter fuel payments taken from pensioners. Now they've U-turned on both of those. When will they finally back British farming and U-turn on the family farm tax?
The problem with the Conservative Party is that they support all the funding, but they don't support any of the ways of funding it. Agricultural property relief means that estates worth more than £3 million will now be taxed at half the rate at which inheritance tax is usually charged. That can be repaid over a 10-year period, interest-free. I think that is the right and fair settlement, given the fiscal environment we face.
Dame Beghill, Chair of the Committee.
Mr Speaker, the Economic Secretary is reviewing the work of the Financial Ombudsman Service, and we recognise on the committee that there have been challenges with that service, but how is she going to make sure that the consumer voice is also central to her review?
I thank my honourable friend. I have met with Which and other consumer representatives, and I can reassure her that we obviously are reviewing FOS, but we want to make sure that it is a simple, impartial dispute resolution service which quickly and effectively deals with complainants, so that consumers can get a fair deal, but also that financial services firms aren't subject to a quasi-regulator in the way they are at the moment.
Susan Murray.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Following the Pension Minister's response to me about pensioner living standards, what specific measures announced in the Government's pensions reforms will support pre-1997 defined benefit pensioners currently receiving minimal or no annual uplift?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. She's right to highlight the question of pensioners' living standards, and we are taking action right the way across the board to deal with that. Should have seen the increases in the state pension just in April. We've seen nearly 60,000 extra awards for pension credit over the course of the year since last July compared to the year previously. Directly on the question of pre-1997 indexation she raises, this was discussed with the Work and Pension Select Committee recently, and we've set out our response to that committee's report.
Catherine Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Backing Rolls-Royce, a brilliant Derby business, to deliver small modular reactors with £2.5 billion of investment shows what Labour's new industrial strategy is about. Backing British business, creating more skilled jobs and delivering clear, secure energy. Does the Chancellor agree that after years of chaos with the party opposite, Britain is unashamedly open for business?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and we're proud as a government to back Rolls-Royce and to have them as our preferred provider for the small modular reactor programme, resulting in lower bills and more good jobs, particularly in Derbyshire.
Blake Stevenson.
Mr Speaker, from responses to my written parliamentary questions, we know that the median earner can expect to pay £273 more in tax this year under Labour. When the Chancellor sat on this side of the House, she described freezing tax thresholds as picking the pockets of working people. Does the Chancellor accept that she's the one picking the pockets of working people now?
Well, in the budget last year, we increased taxes by £40 billion, but without affecting the pay packets of ordinary working people. We didn't increase their national insurance, their income tax or their VAT, and we didn't go ahead with the wrong-headed increase in fuel duty that was put in by the party opposite. We are protecting working people, and the party opposite picked their pockets time and time again.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Ports are engines for economic growth in sectors like energy and critical minerals. Falmouth Port, in my neighbouring constituency and surrounded by massive tin and lithium deposits, has ambitious plans to play its part. In line with our manifesto commitment of £1.5 billion Ports Fund, can the Chancellor outline what mechanisms the National Wealth Fund and GB Energy can deploy to invest in ports?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and he will know that this government have already invested through the National Wealth Fund in the tin mine in his own constituency, bringing good quality jobs, paying decent wages to the people of Cornwall, as advocated by Cornish MPs. But there's more that we can do through the National Wealth Fund, including investing in our ports, which is absolutely vital for clean, cheap energy and creating good jobs in this country, including in Cornwall.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A recent FOI request has revealed that for a number of schemes, HMRC settled with large corporations for just 15% of what was owed. With the loan charge review ongoing, will the Chancellor agree with me that individuals should be treated no differently to this precedent set with large corporations?
Wow.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and he's engaged with me about the loan charge previously. As he knows, there is an independent review into the loan charge ongoing at the moment, and I think it's really important that I, as a minister, don't comment on that. Let the independent reviewer complete his work and then report back to us as a government.
Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The loan charge scandal is absolutely awful and devastated tens of thousands of people's lives. It failed to be addressed under the last government. Can the Minister please tell us what he is doing to make sure that people aren't still being sold this illegal product?
Well, I thank my honourable friend very much for her question, and I can reassure her that alongside the loan charge review, the government has published a consultation on a comprehensive package of measures to close in on promoters of marketed tax avoidance. And these contrived schemes, as we know, both deprive public services of funding and also leave their clients with unexpected tax bills. I'll leave it there.
Mr. McVeigh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Chancellor believe that the changes she has made to the employers' national insurance contributions will lead to higher levels of employment, or will it lead to higher levels of unemployment?
Well, let's look at the record so far. There are 385,000 more jobs in the UK economy today than there were when Labour came to office a year ago. That's more than 1,000 jobs a day. So businesses are voting with their feet, taking on more workers because of the policies by this Labour government compared to the Tory policies which took our economy down.
Callum Anderson.
People living longer, they face more complex financial choices, and the new simplified advice regime announced by the government and the FCA yesterday is hugely welcome and will help more people make better informed investment decisions. Can the Minister provide more detail on the steps that the government will be taking to help firms deliver better advice at scale, especially to young people and the self-employed?
I thank my honourable friend. We're really excited about targeted support because it means that firms will be able to make suggestions to consumers with similarities, and will make sure that they can invest, have the confidence to invest in the long term, and also give them better support, not advice, on their pensions as well.
John Glenn.
Further to that answer, could I ask the Minister to confirm that one of the regulatory barriers in that area is privacy and electronic communications regulations, which prevent firms from proactively reaching out to customers to offer that targeted support? As part of the review, will she ensure that that specific regulatory change is amended so that that effect can happen?
I can assure him that we are looking at this, and we will make sure that firms can take the advantages of targeted support to ensure that their consumers are better off and they're able to suggest that targeted support to them so they can make more of their money and indeed get a better pension as well.
Sonny Kumar.
Mr. Speaker, 58% of investors think that it's important that their stocks and shares ISAs is invested in UK companies. Currently, there's an estimated 100 billion held in people's cash ISAs who do not have stocks and shares ISAs. What steps is my right honourable friend taking to encourage further investment in UK stocks and shares and investing in UK companies?
As we set out at the Spring Statement, we are looking at the balance between investments in cash and investments in stocks and shares in ISAs. We want to get that balance right. We understand the importance of a rainy day buffer for people in cash, but we also think we need to give people the confidence to invest, which is a win-win. It's a win for them and it's a win for British companies who are listed on our stock exchange.
Mr. Speaker, Jackie from Street suffers with Crohn's disease, fibromyalgia and mental health issues. She's worked for most of her life until ill health made it impossible. Under the reforms, she is going to lose her entitlement to PIP and ESA, plunging her into poverty. So can the Chancellor give Jackie the reassurance that she needs, that she won't be left in poverty?
Yes, I can absolutely give my assurance to Jackie and other people who are currently claiming personal independence payments that they will see absolutely no change in their entitlement. That is what the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions announced to this chamber yesterday, that everybody who's currently on those benefits will see no change whatsoever. And then the TIMS review, which will be co-produced with disabled people and those who represent them, will build a new system for the future.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree that we are driving growth across every part of the country with investments at the spending review, including £15.6 billion for transport projects in city regions and additional support that I saw myself in Warwickshire with the launch of their electric bus fleet, including buses built at Alexander Dennis in this country, and that this shows a government that's investing in the future prosperity of our country?
It was great to be with my honourable friend in Warwickshire just a couple of weeks ago to welcome some of the investment through our industrial strategy and our spending review that will turbocharge the British economy, creating more good jobs, paying decent wages in all parts of the country, including in Warwickshire.
Sir Olney.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. Last week, ahead of the launch of their ethnicity code, the Lending Standards Board announced that it would be closing following a withdrawal of support from major high street banks. And this was going to be a groundbreaking step towards tackling the barriers that ethnic minority business owners face in accessing finance. So can I ask the Chancellor what steps the government will take to ensure that the ethnicity code is implemented, supported and scaled so that its principles are embedded across the financial sector? Thank you.
The situation, and can I reassure the Honourable Lady that the Government is committed to ensuring that firms continue to deliver good customer outcomes now and in the future with proportionate regulation and oversight. I'm happy to engage with her in more detail on the subject she mentioned.
Question Melanie on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can the Chancellor please provide an update on the invaluable Viking CCS project in the Humber?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. And at the spending review, we were enabled to build on the investment we had already made in Merseyside and Teesside with track 1 of carbon capture and storage, and put investment into both the Acorn project in Scotland and also Viking in the Humber to support this government's ambitions for Britain to lead the way in carbon capture and storage, creating more good jobs in all parts of the country, including in Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes.
That completes questions. Let front bench change over. We now come to statements. Minister, Justin Matters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I wish to make a statement on the Government's manifesto commitment to review the system of entitlements to parental leave. This Government is dedicated to delivering more for working families. Our plan to make work pay is central to how we achieve this. The mission to grow the economy, raise living standards across the country and create opportunities for all. It will help people to stay in work, improve job security and boost living standards. This includes helping working parents and supporting them to balance their work and home lives. Parental leave and pay entitlements play a key role in this. We know that the arrival of a child, whether through birth or adoption, is a transformative time in a family's life. And we know that the current parental leave system does not support modern diverse working families as well as it could. For example, parents groups and campaigners have long argued that our paternity leave is too short and compares poorly with other countries. And whilst shared parental leave is available to families where fathers and partners want to take a longer period, evidence shows that take-up is very low. The Parental Rights Survey reported that 1% of all mothers and 4% of all fathers are using this entitlement. In addition, the survey also showed that 35% of fathers are not taking paternity leave due to financial reasons. We are committed to improving the current parental leave system and are already taking action. Improving this system will have the added benefit of increasing workforce participation by helping employers fill vacancies. It will also contribute to increased productivity, benefiting the economy. The Employment Rights Bill is one vehicle through which we are improving the parental leave system. This bill makes paternity leave and parental leave day one rights, meaning that employees will be eligible to give notice of their intent to take leave from their first day of employment. The bill also contains a number of other measures which will improve the support working families receive. It will put in place legislation that makes it unlawful to dismiss pregnant women, mothers on maternity leave and mothers who come back to work for a 6-month period after they return, except in specific circumstances. It will also make flexible working the default, except where not reasonably feasible. And it requires that all large employers produce action plans which will contribute to closing the gender pay gap. So I'm pleased to announce today that this government is going further and is taking another step forward in delivering improvements for working families. I'm pleased to launch the parental leave review today, fulfilling our commitment in the plan to make work pay to review the parental leave system to ensure that it best supports working families. The review will form part of delivering the plan for change, linking two of the government's missions to kickstart economic growth and break down barriers to opportunity. The work of this review will support this government's commitments to raising living standards and giving children the best start in life. It also links to work being undertaken to alleviate child poverty. This review presents a much-needed opportunity to consider our approach to the system of parental leave and pay, giving due consideration to balancing costs and benefits to both businesses and the Exchequer. And I welcome the opportunity to provide the House today with more detail on this review. This review will be co-led by the Department of Business and Trade and the Department of Work and Pensions, the two departments who have the main responsibility for the current parental leave framework. There will, however, be close working across government to deliver this review to reflect the wide influence the parental leave system has on the policies in other departments. The current system has grown up gradually over time. For example, the first maternity arrangements were set out in the Factory and Workshop Act of 1891, which introduced the idea that women who work in factories cannot work for 4 weeks after giving birth. Subsequent entitlements have been added to support specific groups as needs have emerged. This has created a framework that does not always work cohesively as a whole. This piecemeal approach to parental leave and pay means that the system has never had an overarching set of objectives for what it should deliver. This review presents an opportunity to reset our approach and understanding of parental leave and pay and what we want the system to achieve. We will use the review to establish what Britain needs from a parental leave and pay system, supporting our modern economy and delivering improvements for working families. We have set 4 objectives as our starting point. We intend to test these objectives as we progress the review to make sure that we are truly reflecting the needs of the nation. Our first objective is to support the physical and mental health of women during pregnancy and after giving birth to a child. Our second objective is to support economic growth by enabling more parents to stay in work and advance in their careers after starting a family. This will particularly focus on improving both women's labour market outcomes and tackling the gender pay gap. Our third objective is to ensure that there are sufficient resources and time away from work to support new and expectant parents' well-being. This will also include facilitating the best start in life for babies and young children, supporting health and development outcomes. Our fourth objective is to support parents to make balanced childcare choices that work for their family situation, including enabling co-parenting and providing flexibility to reflect the realities of modern work and childcare needs. There are 3 cross-cutting considerations which will also be factored into our review. The first is to build a fair parental leave system between parents within a family, different types of parents, and parents with different employment statuses. The second consideration is to balance costs and benefits to businesses and the Exchequer, as well as examining how the system can support economic opportunities for businesses and families. As part of this, the review will consider opportunities to make the process surrounding parental leave simpler for both businesses and parents. The final cross-cutting consideration focuses on improving our society, for example, in supporting the child poverty strategy and on shifting social and gender norms, including around paternal child care. All current and upcoming parental leave and pay entitlements will be in the scope of the review. This will enable us to consider how the parental leave and pay system should operate as a complete system to improve the support available for working families. This broad scope means the review will consider the individual existing entitlements and how best to ensure improvements can be delivered for working families, as well as related wider issues and themes. For example, the review will consider whether support available meets the needs of other working families who do not qualify for existing statutory leave and pay entitlements, such as kinship carers and self-employed parents. It will also consider how the pay system works more broadly. This will be an evidence-based review that reflects and considers the perspectives and experiences of those who engage with the parental leave and pay system. We welcome views from and intend to engage constructively with a wide range of external stakeholders, both from groups representing parents and families, including trade unions, and with employers or employers' representatives. There will be opportunities for stakeholders to contribute views and expertise throughout the review, including through a call for evidence, which also launches today. This call for evidence seeks initial evidence specifically in relation to the objectives, which will set the foundation for what we want our system to deliver. This review launches today, Mr. Speaker. We expect it to run for a period of 18 months. The Government will conclude the review with a set of findings and a roadmap, including next steps for any potential reforms forward to implementation. This is an important step forward to ensure that our workplaces are fit for the 21st century, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Minister Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement. From personal experience as a father of three, I understand the importance of fathers being able to spend time at home with their newborns and supporting mothers in those early days. Having experienced paternity leave both as a Member of Parliament in 2020 and 2021, as well as very differently in 2016 while self-employed, I am proud that the UK does already offer some of the most generous maternity and paternity rights, but of course, there is always room for improvement. Indeed, Conservatives introduced shared parental leave, allowing new parents to spend precious time caring for their newborns. It is therefore with interest that we digest the contents of this ministerial statement today. However, I do have deep reservations about both its substance and its timing. I understand the government pledged that this review would be done and dusted within a year, another broken promise. But it's curious that they've chosen today, of all days, to launch it. I'm in no doubt that today's statement has been rushed into the minister's hands to deflect from what I suspect will be a difficult day of parliamentary business for the government. That much is clear, since the Secretary of State was entirely incapable of confirming how much statutory paternity pay currently is on LBC this morning. I welcome the fact the Secretary of State apologised to Nick Ferrari in admitting he really should know, and perhaps the Minister can set the record straight for his boss today. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to make it crystal clear that Conservatives are not opposed to increased parental leave, so long as it is proportionate, affordable, and does not increase unemployment. But therein lies the problem, because this government has left themselves no breathing room. Their political choices have imposed the most significant headwinds on business in a generation. Those choices have driven unemployment up by 173,000 since July last year. Businesses across the land are now contending with taxes on jobs that Labour promised would never come. And now they are staring down the barrel of 300 pages of closely typed union-led red tape in the unemployment bill, which will upset a carefully balanced and fair relationship between employees and employers that has spanned decades. Even Tony Blair and Gordon Brown refused to open that box. No real business supports that bill. The 5 biggest business groups have warned against it. It will make hiring tougher and force employers to take fewer risks on new starters, disproportionately pushing young mothers out of the workforce. Flexible working will be almost entirely eviscerated from Britain's job market. The reasonable measures which employers and employees have benefited from for years that allow businesses to take a chance on new hires. We already know business across the UK have had no choice but to cut jobs, reduce hours, or put hiring on pause because of the Chancellor's toxic treatment towards enterprise. So if it's helpful, I can spell it out for the benefit of the government front bench. It really is quite straightforward. It is not possible to benefit from employment rights if people don't have a job in the first place. And with that in mind, it deeply concerns me that the Minister's statement made only a passing mention to the impact on business. This comes as no surprise, since not one person around the Cabinet table has any real business experience. The government have admitted that this review, which they said would be squared away by now, will take 18 months. Over the next 18 months, we will watch the ravaging impacts of Labour's anti-business policies transform from a drip to a deluge. The jobs tax, business rates relief cut, investment in capital forced overseas, the employment rights bill, the family business death tax, unemployment will continue to rise, businesses will close, and any chance of growth will be sapped from our economy. So it's all well and good that the Minister announces this review in the House today. But, Mr. Speaker, let us be in no doubt. When it concludes in a year and a half's time, Britain's economy will have been stripped of all signs of life because of the choices Labour have made.
Minister.
Well, I take that the Shadow Minister is not in support of the review. Can I just correct him on a few points? Of course, it's not coincidence that this is being announced today, because it was a clear manifesto pledge that we would launch the review within 1 year of taking office. And of course, this week we do celebrate that astounding election victory. It is £187.18 for statutory paternity pay. We know from representations that we've had already that many do not think that is a right level. He mentioned how Tony Blair and Gordon Brown refused to open this box, but of course it was actually under their government that we got a right to statutory paternity pay and a number of other family-friendly rights, which of course the Shadow Minister has taken advantage of. And I think we know where the Conservative Party stand on these issues when their leader says maternity pay has gone too far. I don't quite know what she meant by that, but I think it means that they would be rolling back some of the well-earned gains in terms of family-friendly policies. And, of course, the Shadow Minister, as I would expect, doesn't miss an opportunity to mention the Employment Rights Bill. Could I suggest he has a word with his Secretary of State, who clearly hasn't read it? I refer to his recent open letter to businesses, where he mentioned a number of issues in relation to the bill. First of all, he complained that we're creating the Fair Work Agency, conveniently forgetting that both in the 2017 and 2019 Conservative Party manifestos there was a similar pledge to create a single enforcement body. He refers to an introductory measure on electronic industrial action balloting, which of course Conservatives will be big fans of electronic voting given the number of leadership elections they have taken part in recent years. The Shadow Minister needs to inform his Shadow Secretary of State that that isn't in the bill. So I don't know where he thinks that has come from. We are going to introduce electronic balloting, but it isn't something that's in the Employment Rights Bill because we already have existing powers to implement that. And he also mentioned the Shadow Secretary of State, most curiously in this letter, that there was going to be in the bill a trade union right to roam. Now, I don't know whether he was searching for a new mobile phone contract at the time, but no such right exists. And of course, the Shadow Minister talks about the effect on employment. He needs to keep up to date with the latest Lloyd's Business Barometer, which says that business confidence is now at a 9-year high, and that 60% of firms expect higher staffing levels in the next year. That is a sign, Mr. Speaker, of this government getting things done.
Chair of the Women and Equalities Committee, Sarah Owens.
Mr. Speaker, before I start, I want to say that it's great to see so many and almost every single party represented here but one. The 4 empty chairs in front of us for the Reform MPs, they like to bang on about family values, but when it comes to actually standing up for dads, standing up for parents, they're nowhere to be seen. I'd like to thank the Minister, my honourable friend, for acting on the importance of shared parental leave. And on paternity leave, as someone who had a C-section, I was so grateful to my husband's employers for granting more than 2 weeks leave because, as everyone knows, if you have a C-section, you're not supposed to lift up a kettle for even 6 weeks. It's impossible. However, we also know that not everybody is that fortunate. This is especially true for self-employed people. The Women and Equalities Committee took evidence on parental leave and heard that nearly a third of self-employed dads and other parents didn't take a single day's leave following the birth of their child. So how will this review ensure that self-employed parents' needs will be taken into account?
Minister.
I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for her contribution. She's raised a very important point, and we are studying the committee's recent report on this issue with interest. It is important that we look at how all those in the different forms of employment are able to take advantage of parental leave in one form or another, because it is really important, as my honourable friend mentioned, not just for the physical assistance in the particular circumstances she mentioned, but actually for bonding with the child, that a parent should be there in those early weeks if they can be at all, and that is something that the review will definitely be considering.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Sarah Allwood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for the advance sight of the statement. The Liberal Democrats welcome the government's commitment to the much-needed review on parental leave. Every child deserves the best possible start in life and the opportunity to flourish no matter their background or personal circumstances. Too often, parents struggle on inadequate parental pay and without good enough access to shared leave. Childcare costs are eye-watering, and the balance between family life and work has only become harder and harder to strike. The Liberal Democrats have been calling for an overhaul of the parental leave system to give parents a genuine choice over how they manage their responsibilities in the first months of their child's life. And if I could just gently correct the Shadow Minister, the Liberal Democrats were proud to introduce shared parental leave in government. However, years later, millions of parents are still being denied the choice to spend more time at home, with around a quarter of fathers ineligible for paternity pay. So as we welcome this review into parental leave, I urge the government to look more broadly into the prevalent inequality in caring responsibilities. And I ask, what steps are they taking to support the millions of family carers who are looking after disabled or elderly relatives who have no paid leave at all? Will they commit to a similar review into provision for unpaid carers and to make carers' leave paid? And I ask the Minister if they will commit to reviewing the needs of carers and those of the families who have taken on kinship caring responsibilities. I welcome that commitment in his statement today, but can I ask about the government's plans to introduce statutory kinship care leave? So we're calling on the government to use this review to finally deliver meaningful reforms that address the long-standing concerns of carers and their loved ones, as well as making the changes to the circumstances of working families that can make parenting a joy rather than a burden, and end the dilemma of having to choose between work and family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the support from the Liberal Democrats on this issue? And she was right to point out that of course, it was in the coalition government that shared parental leave. I think that's the first time in a long time we've actually heard anyone admit that they were part of the coalition government. There we go. She raised some very important points. I think that a number of these issues will be covered by the Carers Leave review, which is also taking place. Kinship caring is going to be part of this particular review. Obviously, I know that the Liberal Democrats have a long-standing policy on Carers Leave and pay. Clearly, that's something that review will also be taking cognizance of.
Antonia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I welcome the announcement made by the Minister today. I think of the HGV driver that I met recently who said to me that he wasn't able to take the time off to be with his partner and their newborn baby. And I would like to hear the Minister assure me and all of my constituents that these new rights will work for working class people as well as people on higher incomes in professional jobs. And would the Minister agree with me that with today's announcement, with our free school meals announcement, with our childcare announcements and with our announcements on housing, it is now clear that the Labour Party are the party of the family?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question. I think one of the real achievements of the last Labour government is to recognise giving children the best start in life is absolutely fundamental to rebuilding our society, and that is something that is at the heart of what we've proposed today. Now, I think she does raise an important point that actually these entitlements do have an element of income inequality to them. That is something that we're going to be bearing in mind. One of the messages we've had very clearly is that many fathers in particular would like to take more paternity leave but just simply can't afford to, and that's something that we will be looking at as part of the review.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having a child is a personal choice, and it's a blessing that I've enjoyed 5 times. Becoming old, becoming sick and becoming disabled are not personal choices, and yet we've had cuts to winter fuel
allowance, and we're about to discuss a bill controversially in this House that would remove a large element of the support we currently give sick and disabled people. What does that say about the government's priorities?
Well, the honourable member will know that the winter fuel allowance has been restored for many people in this country, and there's actually been a very clear commitment the Chancellor just gave it that actually any existing claimants of PIP will not be affected by the announcement. One of the things that we are looking at in the round as well is how we ensure that people are able to be supported to stay in work as part of the Charlie Mayfield review, and that is something I think is actually something I would have hoped the Conservatives would support as well.
Mark Seward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Can I warmly welcome the Minister's statement today? As a recent dad with two very recent experiences, I know just how valuable paternity leave is for fathers, and good companies do as well. I note that Tesco and other good employers have already increased the paternity leave offer for their employees because they know a good workforce is a happy workforce. So can I encourage the Minister to actively pursue those companies that have already increased their paternity leave offers to get their data and insights fed into the review with a view to permanently increase paternity leave?
Minister.
Well, can I congratulate my honourable friend on his recent parenthood, and also pay tribute to the honourable member for York Outer, who I understand is on paternity leave as we speak. Now, he has mentioned a very important point about businesses, good businesses understanding the importance of treating their staff well. I would like to draw the House's attention to a quote from the Chief People Officer for Aviva, who operate a very progressive parental leave policy. He said, "The chance to spend more time with the new arrival during the important first few months has proved to be hugely beneficial for thousands of our Aviva parents. From supporting their partners to the positive impact it has on mental well-being and engagement with family life, equal parental leave has been literally life-changing for our people." Those are the sort of things that we would want to encourage businesses to look at. I'm sure some will be doing equally well on that, and we're happy to hear any evidence on these matters.
Hi, Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As someone who's about to welcome their second child into the world, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be discussing parental leave, and I welcome this review. I note that the Minister said that one of the objectives of this, to paraphrase, is to reset the relationship between men and women and to make that more equal. Might I suggest gently that this is necessary but not sufficient, and really to get to the heart of that matter, we need to look at early years funding. When you have a gap, when it's £6.12 provided by the government, £6.12p, and providers in my constituency, like the Little Learning Tree, say that it's £7.50 for delivery, I think we have a problem there that's going to mean that the parental leave review is not going to get to the heart of that matter. Would the Minister consider including the Department of Education in this review so that we can actually get to the heart of equality between men and women?
Well, the honourable member raises an important point. Clearly, this government has done great work already in expanding the availability of affordable childcare, but there is always more to do. Now, this won't be something that is specifically part of the review, but I can confirm that we will be working with other departments to see how their input can help in terms of the outcomes that we want to achieve with this review.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the fathers that met with me in Haslingden will really welcome this review and the announcement today from the Minister. But in the conversations I've had, I've been really struck by the challenges specifically for some of our public sector workers. Teachers being almost forced back, a week, maybe if they've been able to take that after a holiday period, and police officers as well, particularly challenged around not being able to access parental leave and paternity rights. So will the Minister reassure me that this will be absolutely squarely within the terms of the review, and he'll be looking to make progress on these important issues?
Minister.
Well, I think my honourable friend raises some concerning issues, possibly about the culture at some of these employees who don't see the value of parental and paternity leave. Look, I think we all know that recruitment and retention in teaching is a particular issue. Actually, particularly, there aren't enough male teachers as well. That's a challenge, and maybe one of the things that's behind that is part of that cultural shift that we need to see. So I'm sure that those comments can be fed in.
Thank you, sir. My constituent, Christina Harris, very sadly lost her job when she had to take time off to care for her very seriously ill daughter, Sky, who I'm pleased to report is now in remission. Christina started a parliamentary petition calling for employers to hold open the jobs of parents who, through no fault of their own, have to take time off to care for a very seriously ill child, a bit like maternity leave in principle. She achieved a debate in Westminster Hall in February, which the Minister replied to, and then very kindly he met with her some weeks later, and if I may say so, dealt with her incredibly empathetically and listened very carefully to what she said. I was there. As he said the review will have a broad scope, his words, can he offer my constituent Christina Harris any hope with regards to her idea, and any hope for the approximately 4,000 parents each year who find themselves, through no fault of their own, in similar circumstances?
Well, I thank the honourable member for his question, and it was indeed a pleasure to meet Christina, his constituent. She raised a very important issue, which we know is not isolated. There is, as he will know, a carers leave review which is being undertaken, which I think is probably the more appropriate forum for this issue, but I know that it is something that he will continue to passionately campaign on, and I look forward to further engagement on that matter.
Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I first pay tribute to the Prime Minister and the Business Secretary, along with many others, for leading from the front on the importance of their own role as fathers. I truly believe that paternity leave is the single most important thing that this government can do to improve the lives of families and women too. And I really hope that we can get to providing 6 weeks paternity leave paid by the government at 90% of pay. Employer support, though, is going to be critical to making this a success. So does the Minister agree with me that this review is an opportunity to engage and provide clarity to businesses on how to work with paternity leave and parental leave?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question. One of the things that's become clear, not particularly in relation to paternity leave, but in relation to shared parental leave, is actually employers often find it difficult to navigate the system, never mind the parents. But that is something that we will be considering and looking at as part of the review.
Kirsty Black.
Only 3% of women surveyed by Maternity Action had no financial worries during the course of their pregnancy. Given how awful the statistic is, will the Minister commit to listening to those with lived experience and actually co-producing the outcomes of this review with those people who've been through these situations?
Well, the honourable member makes a very important point. We, of course, will be taking representations from all interested parties. There is a call for evidence which is now live, will be up for a period of 8 weeks, and we'd encourage any bodies who have got important things to say to feed that in as part of the process.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alongside this government's actions on increasing the provision of affordable, available and accessible childcare, I strongly welcome this review as a real step forward. Does the Minister agree with me that for many, the complexities of the system we've got form a real barrier to accessing it, and for low-paid workers in particular, the provision of unpaid leave just makes it simply unaffordable? And will he commit that this review will have at its heart true accessibility of the system so that people can take proper advantage of it and benefit along with their children?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. As a recently new father himself, he will know the system itself. And one of the things that we do here, and as he's rightly referred to, is the complexity of the system and actually the lack of availability and opportunity for those particularly in low-paid occupations, as well as those who are not directly employed. These are all things, Mr. Speaker, that we will be considering as part of the review.
Lisa Slart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is, of course, to be welcomed that the Government is having a look at how best to support all families of all shapes and sizes in the early weeks and months of a child's life. And I know the Minister knows that there is currently a gap for those who are self-employed looking to grow their family through adoption, because we have corresponded on the matter. I listened very carefully to the Minister's comments, and he talked about adoption, he talked about self-employment, but I wonder if he could give constituents like Kirsty from Marple the reassurance that she is looking for, that there will be an explicit stream of this work looking at self-employed adopters who currently don't get any financial support from the Government.
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for her question. She has, as she's referred to, raised this before, and I think it's a very, very important point. Having had some involvement in the adoption system myself recently, I do understand that it doesn't really fit in terms of the current rights system. So it is important that we look at that in the round. And of course, as I've already mentioned, Mr. Speaker, those who are currently excluded from the system altogether because they are self-employed or in some other working relationship which doesn't fit within the current statutory parameters will also be considered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I very much welcome this review. I think most people who are in this room, with some exceptions, recognise that supporting families and supporting children is in our national interest. And I'm very pleased to hear the government recognise and commit that parental leave, particularly for dads, is just not enough right now. I am concerned about the timescale for where we'll be able to make progress on this issue and the implications for mothers who may actually face more discrimination when they have protected rights if dads don't. So as a holding measure, given there is general consensus that we do need to do more to support fathers, will the Minister accept the amendment that's been put forward in the Lords by Baroness Penn to introduce the recommendations of the Select Committee of, by the end of this Parliament, introducing a right to 6 weeks parental leave for the second parent paid at 90% of salary, and that we can make a difference for every parent within this lifetime?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question. Now, of course, if I was to accept specific recommendations at this point, it would be rather preempting the review, but I have to say I do hear the arguments that have been made, and obviously the other place will decide how they want to proceed with various amendments to the Employment Rights Bill. I just hope they hurry up with it.
Mr. Speaker, may I add my voice to welcoming this review as chair of the APPG, and this review is a step in the right direction in correcting a decade of Tory failure on this issue. The Tories thought that giving dads 2 weeks of paternity leave and allowing them to break it up into 1 week chunks was progress. I note that fathers were not in the 4 objectives announced by the Minister, so does he accept that you can't achieve those 4 objectives without better paternity leave and pay? For example, you can't achieve good physical and mental health of women in afterbirth without addressing the rights of fathers and birthing partners. And does he accept, and if he accepts this, will he agree to meet with the APPG of fatherhood throughout this review?
Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable member for his question. Of course, I'm happy to meet with the APPG as part of this review. He said there was no explicit reference to fathers in the 4 objectives, but I would suggest actually our general references to parents do include fathers. So, for example, the second objective is to support economic growth by enabling more parents to stay in work, and the 4th objective is to support parents to make balanced childcare choices that work for their family situation, including enabling co-parenting. I believe that does clearly address the point that the honourable member has raised.
Daniel Francis.
Speaker, as the father of twins, I saw the impact that there's an increased complexity of children being born early or with disability, and the mental health aspects of leaving your loved one at home with multiples when you go back to work. So in that wider review, could we be looking at those mental health aspects for mothers, particularly in the case of multiple births?
Minister.
The honourable member raises an interesting point. I have to say it's not one that I've considered in terms of whether there needs to be an additional approach for multiple births, but I'm happy to see any evidence that he submits on behalf of that particular group as part of the review.
Colin Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everyone will know that I want to see life-affirming laws restored to the United Kingdom. Therefore, underpinning the birth of a child with adequate parental leave is of utmost importance, given the very important needs before and after birth. Will the Minister confirm that this will look at the issue of premature births and ensuring that mum and dads who are blessed to have a preemie baby are not disadvantaged? And will the Minister ensure that learning here is related to Northern Ireland, to the devolved Assembly, so that they too can make progress in this regard?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for her question. Of course, we will want to work with all devolved nations on these important matters, I think it's fair to say we would hope that any changes or improvements that are made are spread throughout the nation.
Liz MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the review. We should also recognise that the journey to becoming a parent is not a straightforward one, with the equivalent of one child in every UK classroom born through IVF. As he knows, and we've discussed, there are glaring gaps in employment law with no statutory right to fertility treatment. So could the review also look at this and recognise that sometimes you also need leave to become a parent?
Minister.
I recognise the honourable member's comments and the long-standing campaign that she has raised on this issue. Of course, IVF is very much more commonplace than it was when these laws were originally introduced, and the process of securing pregnancy in those situations is a very different issue. It's not something, I'm afraid, that is part of the review, because we are looking at what happens at the point of birth, but of course I'm happy to continue to engage with her on the wider points.
Jess Brenfell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A key barrier for many women returning to the workplace after starting a family is the challenge of balancing work with feeding their child. There is a lack of facilities in many workplaces with no provision for expressing or the storing of breast milk. So will the review consider improving provisions for breastfeeding parents and the need for individuals to be given breaks to do so?
I'm all right. Minister.
Well, that's a very interesting point that is probably slightly outside the scope of the review, because that's probably more about how people are dealt with in the workplace. This is really about making sure that we've got the structures in place to ensure that people can balance their parenting needs with the ability to carry on in work and actually make the most of those opportunities. I'm happy to correspond with her on this matter, though, because I think that is a very interesting point that's been raised.
Josh Newbury.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a supporter of the Dad Shift campaign, I wholeheartedly welcome this statement. One of my constituents told me that after the birth of both his children, his wife had complications. The first time round, he was only able to take 2 weeks off, and then had to return to his 40-mile commute, leaving his wife to recover whilst caring for a newborn. Second time round, his employer had been bought out by a Belgian firm, so he was able to take far longer off to fully support his wife. Would the Minister agree with me that boosting paternity leave entitlement would go a long way to closing the gender pay gap?
Minister.
I thank the honourable friend for his question. I've met with the Dad Shift myself. I've held an event in my constituency, and they do put forward a very articulate case as to why paternity leave is falling down. I reflect on my own experiences some time ago. I think my first child was born before paternity leave was introduced. Yes, I am not old. And my second was after paternity leave had been enabled in law, and the experiences were like chalk and cheese, and I think it does speak to the importance of enabling fathers to have some of that time off at those early crucial weeks.
Madeira Wilson.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome this review, and in particular I'd like to welcome the fact that it is going to look at leave for kinship carers. The Minister will know that I and my Liberal Democrat colleagues have long been campaigning for statutory paid leave for kinship carers, given the sacrifice they make and given how many fall out of the workforce when they take on those responsibilities. So could I press him that maybe within this 18-month timeline for the whole review, that on kinship care leave, that might be an area that he looks to fast forward, because the economic case, both short-term and long-term, is so strong that, frankly, he ought to be able to move on that particular aspect quicker than some of the other ones that he's got to consider.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say, Mr. Speaker, I recognise the consistent campaigning on this particular issue, and I pay tribute to the work that kinship carers have done to take on those responsibilities, and I think there is a very articulate case made about the contribution that they make to society as a whole. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to short-circuit the review to deal with particular groups. I think we do need to look at the system as a whole. That is one of the deficiencies in the current system, that it has been built up over many years in a very piecemeal way, and it doesn't have the holistic approach that we are now seeking to introduce.
Deirdre Custin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's 55 years, over half a century, since the Equal Pay Act, yet women are still paid less than men. And the quote I read about 20 years ago in a newspaper article which said childcare was catastrophic for women's careers still could be quoted today. But the employment rights bill that this government has brought forward is ensuring businesses don't just publish their gender pay gap, they will now have to do something about it with mandatory action plans. So could the Minister tell us how today's parental leave review will help further reduce the gender pay gap and finally deliver equality for working women?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank my honourable friend for her question and for her consistent campaigning on this issue. She is right to point out that the Employment Rights Bill has important advances in this area, but this review also will be, I hope, a positive impact on the gender pay gap. In particular, the second objective of the review is to make sure that we enable parents to stay in work and advance their careers after starting a family. And this will particularly focus on both the women's labour market and its outcomes and tackling, of course, the gender pay gap.
Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for the statement today. It's positive and thank him for that. I wish to ask a question if I can, Minister. The fact that parents cannot share the leave between them leaves a sense of one primary caregiver, which is not an accurate picture for most households anymore in today's age that we live in. Indeed, over 50% of households in Northern Ireland are dual income, meaning that childcare needs are shared. So would the Minister and Government in the pilot scheme consider ensuring that mothers and fathers can use the leave between them as needed, as opposed to the leave being used by one parent solely? And will the Minister commit to this being part of the review? Thank you so much.
Minister.
Well, as always, it's a pleasure to hear from the honourable gentleman. He raises an important point about how the current shared parental leave system isn't working, and I think that we've seen from the figures that the number of people taking advantage of that is in the low single figures in terms of percentages. That is something that we're very aware of and something that we will be looking at very closely as part of the review.
Speaker, can I warmly welcome this, and I know that families and dads in St Helens North will welcome it as well. I'm also sure that Jay White, who runs the Dad Matters organisation in St Helens, supporting new dads and doing a great job, will warmly welcome this as well. With dads from across the country and across the chambers, we've already heard, I've been supporting the Dad Shift campaign, saying that 2 weeks isn't enough, because I know from personal experience that it isn't, and from speaking to new dads across St Helens, I know that it isn't. Can the Minister please confirm, for the benefit of dads in St Helens North and elsewhere, that the current state of paternity leave, including consultation with employers, will be a key focus for this review? Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his question. He's absolutely right to identify the current paternity leave measures as being something of concern to fathers and indeed all parents across the country. That is something that will certainly be a large focus of the review.
Conor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And does the Minister agree with me that, as well as being good for parents and good for children, ensuring that dads are able to spend an appropriate amount of time off with their newborn children would be good for our economy, good for productivity and good for businesses too?
Minister.
Yes, I absolutely agree with my honourable friend's proposition. Indeed, we have consistently said through the passage of the Employment Rights Bill that actually treating your workforce well, giving them proper support, ensuring security at work is the way for prosperity in this country.
Mr. Strother.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having raised with the Minister the need to do more on paternity and kinship leave in particular, I very much welcome today's statement and the upcoming landmark review. I recently had the pleasure of hosting a number of parents at the Victoria Pub in Hitchin to talk about the challenges caused by the current paternity leave framework. It was particularly heartbreaking to hear one man's story, an expectant father, of the impact it was already starting to have on him. Ahead of his birth, his wife-to-be was a high-risk case, and so he was already having to take significant leave in advance of the birth that he was worried would then deprive his ability to be there in those crucial days after the birth with the family, with his child, with that new mum who desperately would need that support. That cannot be right. So could I invite the Minister to come to Hitchin actually over a pint to speak to local parents about the impact this review could have for cases like this?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. he certainly knows how to get me to attend the constituency with the offer of a pint. I will certainly look forward to taking him up on that. And he's raised an important point about medical issues. Obviously, there's been some changes recently in terms of neonatal leave and care, which is, I think, a huge step forward. But in terms of pre-delivery issues, that again is something that I think we ought to discuss further. So I look forward to having that pint and conversation.
Chris MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his statement, the Minister mentioned the very low level of take-up of shared parental leave. Would he agree with me that's partly due to the gap in pay between men and women, and that if we can normalise paternity leave in our society, then we'll help to make sure that both mums and dads have equal pay?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. I think that is an important point. That is something that I expect we will be examining as part of the call for evidence. I referred to the work that Aviva have done in this area. They clearly have seen a culture shift in their organisation where actually it is completely normal and acceptable. Indeed, it's encouraged for both parents to take their share of leave. That's something I think we can all take lessons from.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome today's long overdue review of parental leave. The UK currently has amongst the lowest paternity leave in Europe, and that's not just a statistic, it's a real-life struggle for families up and down this country. Can my honourable friend assure me that the review will not only just look at the amount of leave, but the amount of salary that's provided during it to protect those on the lowest wages in our country, and how he's going to go about ensuring the voice of fathers and campaigning groups like the Dad Shift and trade unions are heard in the review?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend raises an important point about the financial implications of this measure. Of course, we will engage with all relevant organisations. The cost is important. We have to, of course, balance the objectives we're trying to achieve here with the cost to the Exchequer and to businesses, but that is what the review will be considering in some detail.
Sean Davis.
Well, may I welcome the statement and the launch of the review itself. I recently held a Dad's Drop-In event supported by Dad Shift, and there I heard from dads about examples of excellent employers doing the right thing, but also frustrations amongst self-employed and those who run SMEs about how complex and confusing the system can be. Can the Minister confirm that the voice of business of all sizes and dads will be the heart of this review? But also, can he give a message to his government colleagues that often government departments and organisations lag behind the best of employers in this country?
Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his question? Really, you know, this government should be leading the way in these areas, and if there are specific examples where we can do better, I'd be interested to discuss that with colleagues in other departments. He's right to reference the complexity of these issues. One of the things that we've heard is that businesses, particularly small businesses, sometimes struggle to navigate all the paperwork, and that's something that the review will also be considering.
That completes the statement. Presentation of Bill Tim Farron. Not here. We will now go to the 10-minute rule bill. Sean Barry.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to establish the right to breathe clean air, to require the Secretary of State to achieve and maintain clean air in England, to make provision about environmental targets and minimum standards in relation to clean air, to make provision about the powers, duties and functions of public bodies in England in relation to air pollution, to give the Office for Environmental Protection additional powers and duties related to clean air, to require the Secretary of State to comply with the United Nations Convention on Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution, to require the Secretary of State and public authorities to apply specified environmental principles in carrying out their duties under this Act, and for connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, I am very grateful for the chance to present the Clean Air Human Rights Bill alongside cross-party colleagues. This bill is about the right to breathe clean air, the right to grow up and grow old without stunted lungs, without preventable diseases like asthma, and without disabling and potentially lethal harm being done to our lungs, hearts and brains by preventable air pollution. We call this bill Ella's Law because it is also about a little girl. a 9-year-old who made history and whose memory powers this campaign for environmental, social and indeed racial justice. I am very grateful to the many honourable and right honourable members who are here today to hear her story. Ella's mother, Rosamond Adukisi Deborah CBE, is also here in the gallery with Ella's sister and brother, Sophia and Robert. And I know that the whole family have many good friends in this house. Yeah. Ella Roberta Adukisi Deborah had nearly 30 emergency hospital admissions between her first diagnosis of asthma at the age of 6 and her tragic death aged just 9 years on the 15th of February 2013. Throughout her illness, there had been no mention of air pollution being a possible factor in her condition. And on Ella's original death certificate, it simply said she died of acute respiratory failure. Her mother, Rosamond, did not know why her lively, sporty and talented daughter had become so ill after being such a healthy child. But years after Ella died, Rosamond began to ask questions and push for answers. The family lived close to the heaving South Circular Road in London, one of the busiest main roads in Europe. And with the help of medical and scientific experts like Professor Stephen Holgate, Rosamond began to realise there could be a link between the high air pollution where they lived and the course of Ella's illness. Together they began to ask, was air pollution responsible for Ella developing asthma in the first place? And were high pollution days responsible for triggering the repeated attacks that eventually took her life? Taking new knowledge and evidence, working with legal professionals like Jocelyn Coburn, a long road began to a new inquest and a landmark new death certificate that for the first time in the world cited air pollution. In December 2020, Deputy Coroner Philip Barlow ruled for this change and said that excessive levels of air pollution had made a material contribution to Ella's death. And in his report to prevent future deaths, he recommended that the government should take note that there is no safe level for particulate matter and that World Health Organization guidelines should be seen as minimum requirements. He also said that legally binding targets based on them would reduce the number of deaths from air pollution in the UK, and he highlighted the lack of public awareness and information about daily pollution levels. And that is what this bill would do, set targets in law based on the very latest World Health Organization guidelines and provide a pathway to comply. Ella's illness began in 2010, and it spanned a period where the area around her home experienced some of the highest levels of air pollution, consistent breaches of legal limits, and terrible injustices. In 2010, it should not have had anything like these levels of air pollution. That's because, following intensive work from campaigner and friend of Ella's Law, Simon Burkitt, the founder of Clean Air in London, alongside environmental campaigners in Europe, in June 2008, Directive 2008-50-EC from the European Commission had entered into force. This set limit values for annual average nitrogen dioxide concentrations in the air people breathe of 40 micrograms per metre cubed. And those limits should have been met by the 1st of January 2010. It also set the first limit values for small particulates, something that is even more deadly at the smallest particle sizes and much lower concentrations. In the UK, we did not achieve these limits before 2010, when Ella's illness began, or even soon after. Instead, this period was one of delay to clean air zones, deception by diesel car manufacturers, and even a mayor putting glue on the roads next to the air quality monitoring stations on days when legal particulate limits might be breached. This was all a true scandal and a tragedy. I hope the government is very aware that the 2010 limits are still far from being fully reached today in parts of England, and its own projections say that parts of the country will not become compliant until 2029, 2032 or even 2045. And these legal limits were based on the 2005 air quality guidelines from the World Health Organization. In 2021, the WHO halved its guideline for the smallest particulates and slashed its guideline for nitrogen dioxide from 40 micrograms per metre cubed to 10. And a new EU directive entered into force for our neighbours in 2024 in December. Here it is clear we need something new as well. And success is clearly possible. There has been much better action in recent years in some areas, notably in London itself. And a good proportion of this has been due to the influence on the Mayor of London of Rosamond, as well as determined campaigning by groups like Mums for Lungs, the Healthy Air Coalition, Asthma and Lung UK, Clean Air in London, Friends of the Earth, Client Earth, and many others. We are making some progress, but to respect the right to breathe clean air, we must move faster and wider in the transition to clean heating, cleaner transport, and cuts in pollution from aviation, farming, and industry as well. The second best time to do the right thing is always now. On Clean Air Day 2025 last month, with other MPs, I was so pleased to meet doctors and campaigners, including Rosamond, on their walk and wheel to Parliament from Great Ormond Street Hospital. They brought us the very important, very latest medical evidence from the Royal College of Physicians. Its new report to MPs highlights and summarises evidence gained over the last decade, showing that there are now links between air pollution and almost every organ in the body and the diseases that affect them. And it estimates that during 2025, 500 premature deaths per week will be attributable to air pollution, and calculates an economic burden of £27 billion in 2019 due to healthcare costs, productivity losses and reduced quality of life. The report above all highlights how air pollution is a preventable public health threat, and we will have the tools to prevent it in this bill, which brings the nearly 70-year-old Clean Air Act up to date, in line with the excellent blueprint published today by the Healthy Air Coalition. Mr. Speaker, introducing this bill again during this parliamentary term is important. The cross-party proposers want to extend and build upon the efforts of Baroness Jones of Moulscombe and others who helped steer a similar bill through the other place in 2022. And my honourable predecessor in Brighton Pavilion, Caroline Lucas, promoted the same bill in this House after that, right up to the end of the previous Parliament. The ultimate hope of us all is that this government will adopt and back Ella's Law in her memory, adopt its provisions, take up the important actions it will mandate, and recognise in law the human right to breathe clean air as soon as possible. For the other children who still die unnecessarily due to air pollution, for the families who still lose loved ones to dementia, cancer, heart disease, and other things caused and made worse by dirty air, I ask the House for leave to present this bill in that hope.
That the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare to bring in the bill?
Ms Stella Creasy, Belle Rubira Addy, Vera Hobhouse, Shoka Adam, Seamus Logan, Claire Hanna, Afzal Khan, Ellie Chowns, Ruth Jones, Uma Kumaran, Dr Ross Savage and myself, Mr Speaker.
Sean Barry.
Clean Air Human Rights Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 7th of November.
Friday the 7th of November. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Universal Credit and Personal Independence Payment Bill, second reading.
Wait. No. No. The reason amendment in the name of Rachel Maskell has been selected. I now call the Minister, Secretary of State, to move the second reading. Liz Kendall.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I beg to move that this bill be read for a second time. This bill and our wider welfare reforms seek to fix the broken benefit system that we inherited from the party opposite and to deliver a better life for millions of people across our country. Our plans are rooted in principles and values I know many in this House share. Compassion for those who need our help most, a belief in equality and social justice, that everyone should have the chance to fulfil their potential no matter where they're born or what their parents did, and responsibility for our constituents and our country as a whole, so we ensure the welfare state is sustainable and lasts for generations to come.
But the system we inherited is failing on all these counts. Members opposite left us with a system that incentivises people to define themselves as incapable of work just to be able to afford to live. They then wrote people off without any help or support and then blamed them to grab a cheap headline. The result is 2.8 million people out of work due to long-term sickness. And 1 in 8 of all our young people not in education, employment or training, with all the terrible long-term consequences this brings for their future job prospects, earnings and health. And the number of people on disability benefits set to more than double this decade, with awards for personal independence payments increasing at twice the rate of increases in the prevalence of disabled people in our society, adding 1,000 new PIP awards a day. That's the equivalent of adding a city the size of Leicester every single year. And I do not believe, let me make some progress, I do not believe that this is sustainable if we want a welfare state that protects people who most need our help for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, there is nothing compassionate about leaving millions of people who could work without the help they need to build a better life. There's no route to equality or social justice when 9 million of our fellow citizens are out of work and not looking at work for work, and when our country has one of the widest disability employment gaps in Europe. And there is no responsibility in leaving our system of social security to continue as it is and risk support for it becoming so frayed that it is no longer there to provide a safety net for those who can never work and who most need our help and support. So this bill, alongside our wider reforms, will help people who can work to do so, protect those who cannot, and begin to get the benefits bill on a more sustainable footing. Labour's historic mission is to get more people into good jobs, because we know the value of good work, not only as the best route out of poverty and to raising living standards, but because good work brings a sense of purpose, pride and dignity, and because there is such clear evidence that good work is good for physical and mental health too. I'll of course give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
I thank the Secretary of State for giving way, and she is absolutely right that any government that takes office should aim to reduce poverty in this country. Why then do her own government's figures show that the actions that she is taking this afternoon will put an extra 150,000 people into poverty? And does she really think that is what her backbenchers expected when they were elected to government last year?
I think that's what they call chutzpah, Mr. Speaker, seeing as members opposite put an extra 900,000 children into poverty, and this government is determined to tackle it. This government will take 100,000 children out of poverty by our plans to extend free school meals to every household on universal credit, a down payment on our child poverty strategy in the autumn. Mr. Speaker, I am very proud that at the spending review, alongside billions of extra investment to create good jobs in every part of the country, to invest in the transport infrastructure and skills so people can get those jobs, and to drive down NHS waiting lists so people can get back to health and back to work, my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, delivered the biggest ever investment in employment support for sick and disabled people, quadrupling what we inherited from the party opposite to £1 billion a year. And as I set out, I will give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way, and I thank the Secretary of State for the improvements that she has made to this bill, which are extremely reassuring for my constituents, 9,000 which are on personal independence payments and are now reassured. There are some, however, that are concerned about the impact assessment published yesterday about the number of adults who could be put into poverty. I do recognise that these figures do not take into consideration the impact of the planned record investment in employment support. Will she publish further assessments which provide a more accurate view?
I would thank my honourable friend for her question. She's absolutely right that those figures do not take into any account the employment impact from the investment we are putting in. We have actually produced extremely clear evidence that good employment support works, including Work Choice, a Labour programme ended by the Tories, which meant 40% more disabled people were in work 8 years later, and we will indeed publish further updated impact assessments before committee stage, spelling this out in more detail. I will, of course, give way to the Honourable.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, thank you. I've been asked by Parkinson's and MS, and I asked this question specifically of the Minister. Hope she give me the answer. They're talking about they will fluctuating condition will be locked out of qualifying for the higher rate of the UC health element. The functional limitation must constantly apply for a claimant to meet the severe conditions criteria. Exactly. So can I ask the Minister, the Secretary of State, please, will she commit on the floor of this House to add explicit reference to the bill to ensure that fluctuating conditions like Parkinson's, like MS, are not locked out of the higher rate? It's really important for those people, if you don't mind. Thanks so much.
The honourable gentleman raises a very important point, and I would say to him that our honourable members have asked about the issue of whether people with fluctuating conditions meet the severe conditions criteria, which is for those with lifelong conditions that will never improve and means they can never work. It is absolutely the case that as someone's condition progresses, if they actually change and meet those severe conditions criteria, they will be protected. And one of the reasons for the TIMS review that I'll come on to later is precisely so we make sure this vital benefit does recognise the impact of fluctuating conditions on people's life. That's absolutely crucial to make sure this benefit is fit for the future. Now, as I set out to the House, I'll make a tiny bit of progress and then I will respond. As I set out to the House yesterday, we have listened carefully to concerns that there wouldn't be enough employment support in place quickly enough by the time the benefit changes come in. So we are bringing forward an additional new £300 million of employment support for sick and disabled people, delivering a total of £600 million next year, £800 million the year after, and £1 billion in 2028-29, increasing our total spending on employment support for sick and disabled people to £3.8 billion over this Parliament. So we ensure that anyone who is affected by this bill will be offered personalised work, health and skills support, including access to a specially trained advisor by the time the legislation comes in. I will give way to the honourable gentleman.
The Secretary of State giving way. Under the last government, we brought forward the Work Well pilot, which looked at 15 different areas for 59,000 people to provide a package, a multidisciplinary team package to get them back into work. Am I correct in thinking that the £300 million she's investing is built off the back of that pilot? Are they planning to continue it and continue to grow it? Because the results seem to show that it had a very strong preference of getting people back into work while supporting their health. That's what this House wants to do. Does she agree with me that that's the case, and is that the funding?
Joining up work and health support is absolutely essential, and I've personally been to visit some of the projects in place, and they're making a really big difference. We are building on that with additional extra investment, in quadrupling what we inherited from the party opposite. But joining up work and health support is very, very important, because I think good health and good work are two sides of the same coin, but this needs to be available widely and across the country. Turning now to the specific measures in this bill. Clauses 1 to 4 begin to tackle the perverse incentives left by the party opposite, which encourage people to define themselves as incapable of work by rebalancing the Universal Credit Standard Allowance and health top-up. I am very proud that we are delivering the first ever sustained above-inflation rise to the Universal Credit Standard Allowance. The largest permanent real terms increase in the headline rate of out-of-work benefits since the 1970s. 6.7 million households, the lowest income households, will benefit from the increase in the Universal Credit Standard Allowance and deliver a £725 a year increase in cash terms by 2930 for a single person aged 25 and over. Now, having listened seriously to concerns about our original proposals on the UC health top-up for existing claimants and future claimants with severe conditions and those at the end of their lives, we will ensure that for these groups, the combined value of their Universal Credit Standard allowance and the health top-up will rise at least in line with inflation, protecting their income from these vital benefits in real terms every year for the rest of the Parliament. Alongside these changes, Schedule 1 of the bill will ensure that people with severe lifelong health conditions will never be reassessed, removing all the unnecessary and unacceptable stress and anxiety this brings, and so they have the dignity and security they deserve. And yesterday, we published draft regulations on our new right to try, guaranteeing that in and of itself, work will never lead to a benefit reassessment, giving people the confidence to try work, something many people have called for years. Mr. Speaker, turning now to Clause 5 of the bill on personal independence payments. Yesterday,